Welcome to the Therapist Uncut podcast, where off-the-clock therapists who happen to be friends share their uncensored thoughts about real life. Join us weekly in spreading positivity and making mental health relatable through casual conversation, inspirational stories, and real talk with friends who happen to be therapists. Please welcome your co-hosts, Nikki Young, Jolene Daly, and Alyssa Nahara.
Good morning. Welcome to another episode of Therapist Uncut. This morning,
we are so full of giggles today because we are so ready to talk to you guys about how to survive the holidays. And you guys missed it, but I'm going to ask Jolene to do it again. Jolene, can you please introduce us to this episode?
Grandma got run over by a reindeer walking home from my house Christmas Eve. I don't know the rest of the song.
Yes. Classic song. Welcome back, y'all. It is December. It is time to talk about how we are going to get through the holidays. Because yes, they are beautiful, but for lots of us, they are really, really stressful. So today we are going to give you tips on how to survive the holidays. We're going to talk about family, talk about plans. We'll talk about how to keep yourself in check so you can keep your stress under control. And if there are any specific things that you guys enjoy doing around the holidays, let us know. We want to know about your traditions too.
Ooh, I have traditions. We have over 100-year-old fudge recipe that we do. And then we make popcorn balls. So the whole week of Christmas is basically my mom and I killing ourselves to cook. And we'll really bake. It's not food.
So just to clarify, the recipe is 100 years old, right? You don't bake the fudge for 3.5 months in advance?
For 100 years?
No, okay. The recipe is over 100 years old.
Okay, good to know.
So we do fudge and popcorn balls, and then we mix all the cookies. And then the next day this is like 3 days. The next day we bake the cookies. So
and are you and your mom on speaking terms at the end of this?
Yes, usually. However, there might be some adult beverages that are utilized from time to time in order to get through that.
That's awesome. So where did this recipe originate from?
I believe my great grandmother on my mom's side, and she is either German or Jewish. We're not quite sure.
Or that is quite the question.
Yeah, I'm a little stuck on that one there. And she might think she's one thing, but you should tell her, if she wants to avoid an identity crisis, she should avoid 23andMe or any one of those.
That's how we know that there's Jewish somewhere. It comes from somewhere on my mom's side of the family. We just can't figure out where, and we think that's where it comes from.
Got it. I'm not going to name names or anything, but somebody significant in my life spent their whole life thinking they were Italian. It turns out they're a little more Irish. Identity crisis.
Nikki, you are Greek, right?
Yes. I don't know how much of the Greek genes actually made it through to me, considering my skin tone. But yes, I have Greek heritage.
What kind of Greek traditions are there around the holidays for your family?
I don't know that the Greek traditions that have carried forward really apply to this time of the year, more to other holidays that they do. And one thing I've noticed, it's actually, and I think probably a lot of listeners can identify with this, but that's been something that's difficult for me because as the older generations have died, some of those traditions have really fallen out of practice. And there's been a recent attempt to kind of renew some of these from the younger generations, but it's just not the same, right? When I was a kid growing up, I had my great grandparents that would spend, like Jolene's talking about, weeks making pastries, and not weeks, they'd be stale by then, but days making pastries. And it was just, I felt Greek back then. I guess I could say I don't feel Greek anymore because without that influence, I'm just a white kid. Very white kid.
Your lighting is a little bright today.
This is the first time we've recorded with the kind of time change and I don't have the ambient sunlight streaming through the windows, so I'm really struggling today.
In our family, I'm Mexican. So in our family, most Mexicans know that we spend holidays making tamales for days upon days upon days. And it's awesome because the holidays are typically when you make tamales, but by the time the holidays are done, you're like, oh my God, I can't eat another tamal because I just had so like dozens of them. So we make lots of tamales, and we actually created our new tradition in my immediate family that my mom started with us, which is, yeah, you put meat in the tamal, but we also layer it with lots of cheese inside. So that way it's just a bunch of meat and cheese inside the tamal. And I haven't been to anybody else's house where they do that, and they think that we're kind of funny because we do that. But it is the most delicious thing. So if you guys haven't tried it, throw a shit ton of cheese in your tamal because it is delicious.
Thanks. Hungry now.
Super good. Oh, we actually tried last year. We tried chili beans and cheese. It's all right.
Ooh.
It's all right. But it was fun. So that is another thing that you can consider around the holidays is what traditions do you want to pass down and or create? Because I think sometimes we get stuck or bogged down and feeling like our family didn't really have traditions, or I didn't learn these things for my culture, for my family. But now is also an opportunity for you to create new traditions that make sense for your family.
Right. And I've had this conversation a lot lately with just a group of friends as we were talking about the holidays. And the cool thing, once you start to get to adulthood and start your own family and such, you get to create these things, right? You don't have to do what your family has done prior, or like Alyssa was sharing, if you didn't really have or don't feel connected to those traditions, you get to make your own. And you can do that at any point, but I think people start to think about these things once they start having families and such. And one thing that was around this time of year in these holidays for my family was it was never just family. I mean, I think back to Christmas Eve's growing up and with the Greek family, and it was just not our immediate family, it was extended family. But then beyond that, it was neighbors, friends of family, people that didn't have somewhere to go that year, or people that just always were there every year with us. And I think that's probably what started and instilled in me the idea that my family is not just my blood relatives, right? My friends are my family. But that's something that I strive to continue and carry forward throughout my adulthood and with my family, is that it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to go sit down and have a meal with those that we share blood with. It's also anybody that wants to spend time together and get to know each other. And I know not everybody is celebrating the same holidays during this time. So we're interested to hear what your traditions are, if you have them, or what traditions you kind of could dream of. And sometimes they feel out of reach, but you never know till you try.
You know what is so beautiful about what you said? I mean, it was just beautiful, right? The holidays are awesome and you get to be with family and friends. Well, let's talk about all of those holiday dinners that you are obligated or feel obligated to attend that are not so beautiful, that maybe require traditions that you would prefer not to be a part of.
The dark side of the holidays.
The dark side. It is so stressful. I think we all have those cousins or uncles or aunts or grandparents, and we're like, oh God, I got to see them again. How do you deal with that? Especially because oftentimes you feel obligated to be a part of this stuff because it's blood family or because it's whomever it may be.
Obligation is really a perception, though. You don't have to feel obligated. Two things. So setting a boundary of you don't actually have to go.
But what if I don't want to hurt their feelings?
What? I don't have to go?
Right.
Wait, I didn't know that. Just kidding. I knew that, but
There are some people that may be out there that are like, oh, I can say no. You absolutely can say no to anything.
But Jolene, if I say no, this person's going to be mad at me. Dad's going to be pissed. And I'm going to hurt somebody's feelings.
And I'm going to be written out of the will.
You have to think about it. There's a large quantity of money. You might want to go. No. So unfortunately, there are going to be individuals who are upset. Absolutely. However, depending on the circumstances and the reason that you feel like you don't want to go or you're feeling obligated, it may be better for you to stay home and be like putting up the boundaries saying, I'm sorry, I'm not going to go. And then don't answer your phone. Don't answer your text. Don't allow that information in.
I'm a big fan of pros and cons lists, right? So if someone were to set a boundary in that manner, there's going to be pros and cons of setting that firm line. And then there's going to be pros and cons of sucking it up and dealing with XYZ. I'm a big fan of pros cons lists because a lot of times those pros, even though if we give ourselves permission to explore the pros and cons of this, sometimes you're going to go through that process and recognize, okay, you know what, the fallout from this really is not going to be worth it for me personally to just suck it up and deal with Aunt Grilda, I don't know. Sorry if anybody out there named Aunt Grilda is listening to us, but it's worth it for me to just go and manage the negativity or whatever it may be because the fallout is not worth it for me personally. Or you might look at that and say, you know what? Yes, there's going to be this fallout, but I'm going to get a plan in place on how to manage this because it's too unhealthy for me or whatever it may be. And then do what you want. Do what, and I don't mean that in a selfish, narcissistic, it's all about me way, but do what's healthy for you.
So tip 2, you want to identify what your personal boundaries are. And I like to tell people that boundaries are either something's okay with you or it's not okay with you. And when it's not okay with you, what are you going to do about it? And yes, consider setting up healthy personal boundaries when it comes to your family. We are not taught to do that, most of us, but it is so important that we do, especially in our adult life. We start recognizing, ooh, I don't think I like being around this person when they are wasted. Or I don't think I like being around this person because they're full of negativity and all they do is tell me everything that I do wrong when I parent. You get to decide how you're going to manage that and what boundaries you're going to put in place. And I promise you, when you put up these boundaries, people are not going to celebrate them. They're not going to be excited about them. They're going to be really confused and they're probably going to not have very good things to say to you. But it's not about them. Your boundaries are about you. So consider that.
Absolutely. One thing to talk about here is in-law culture shock.
What does that mean, Jolene?
So when you marry your significant other, you don't necessarily think about all the ins and outs of dealing with their family and their different traditions. So hopping back and forth from one house to the next, typically before you're in a significant relationship, you get to go to your families and you get to do all of the things with your family or your friends, whoever you choose. And then you get into a relationship and you have to share that time. And then you have to do things that are really different and odd and unusual.
I'm suddenly wondering about Jason's family's traditions right now.
I don't know. I had a reaction to that. I totally understood what Jolene was saying. Have you not experienced that, Nikki?
I recognize that is a experience. I have been fortunate enough to very much enjoy in-law family traditions and such. So
Nikki's trying not to put her foot in her mouth.
We know that all of our significant others are listening to this, so we're being very cautious around what we say.
No, I very, 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 very much enjoy my in-laws. So, and I know that not everybody is fortunate enough to have that experience. So I'm trying not to brag. Is what I'm trying not to do.
Don't get me wrong. I love my in-laws, and I've finally, the last several years, I've finally gotten into all of the things that they do different. It's just so different than my family. When we go to my mom's side of the family, back when everybody would get together, like you'd walk in, hey, how you doing? Like bump fists, things like that. My husband's side of the family, we go in, you hug every single person and kiss them on the cheek.
Even in COVID?
I can't even contain myself right now. Because
I got good news for you, Jolene. You might not have to do that this year because of COVID.
Not even true. Doesn't even matter because that is the way the family and the culture works.
Right.
I come from a Mexican family. I married a Mexican guy. Little did I know that when I walk into their family functioning that has like 50 fucking people, I literally have to go hug every single one of them. This is why you get to events early so people come see you.
I do
Right.
completely identify with that one.
Right.
Like in our Greek
And
family,
I love
the
my
joke,
husband's family. I will say that.
but it's true when you have families that are that large, it's like you have to, when it's time to go, you have to plan to try to leave 35 minutes early, because by the time you make your rounds to everybody, it's an hour later.
It's so
Yeah.
true.
Yeah,
It is
exactly.
so true. I remember I had to ask my husband, like, I'm just going to the store and coming back, do I really have to hug and say bye and then hug again when I come back? Like, it's so different, because my family, we hug once a day. Doesn't matter if there was an 8-hour gap in between. You get one hug, and that was normal.
This sounds like this isn't a mathematical thing. Nope, you met your quota today. No hugs
We're
from
done.
mom.
No more hugs. We are not the family that hangs up and says "I love you" after every call.
Uh-huh.
We are not the family that, like, when we say bye, we're like, "Bye, I love you." It was an adjustment though. Like, I'm all good with it now because I'm used to it. But you're right. It's like, boom, hits you in the face. Like, holy what? Okay, all right. It took me years to adjust, and it took me years to learn who all of his family was. Like, first cousins. It took me years to learn all of his first cousins.
So tip number 3 is making sure that you really work out with family when you have a lot of holidays to go through too. When you have if you're co-parenting. So in a divorced family, my husband's family is a divorced family, but we're older adults. So we don't have to worry about, we can kind of trade off holidays where Thanksgiving one year at this family, Thanksgiving next year at that family. You can't necessarily do that when you have little ones. So you've got to kind of figure out how are you going to adjust and learn. Some people for holidays, they'll split them. So you do a half at one family and half at the other family, or you can do 2 different days. You don't have to necessarily celebrate. Well,
That is a concept that not many people, well, I think certain categories of people are familiar with. Working in shift work as a crisis therapist in the past, I am very familiar and very okay with a holiday being, so just for example, take Christmas. I know not everybody celebrates that, but December 25th, I use that as an example because I don't know the dates of other holidays. So for example, for me personally, if I'm going to celebrate Christmas, it doesn't have to be on December 25th. Like, I can have the same exact experience on December 2nd or 14th or whatever. And that's something that a lot of people get very rigid around. No, that's not Christmas or whatever it is, right? But why not? Because I know a lot of different faiths and religions come into this, but if you take it back a step, first of all, these holidays are to commemorate something faith-based often, right? But if we rewind back to the date of that incident, I highly doubt that it was that particular date at that particular point in history, right? We picked a day to commemorate something. And so if you step back from the faith and religious aspect of it also, for me personally, and this is just me personally, holidays are about the people around you and connections and such. I could do that on any day of the year, right? So I'm not saying that we don't celebrate these things. I'm just saying it doesn't have to be on that particular date. But also, Jolene hit on co-parenting and sharing children on the holidays. And something I want to just put out there to parents really quick working with kids, just stop for a second, because you're getting your panties in a wad about, I got this last year, you got this, blah, 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 I want this, but great Aunt Joe's going to be in town. Blah, 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 blah. It's just stop for just a second, because your kids hear all this, they see all this, they feel all of this, and you are creating little holiday monsters that are going to hate the holidays because it's stressful. They feel as though they are at the center of another fight between mom and dad. Just chill out for a second, please. Just
it's
chill.
not about you, it's about the kids. It really doesn't matter what you want, what you think. It's about the kids.
I'm going to pause that. I'm going to disagree with you. It does matter. But think about you handle it. So it is kind of about you because it's your life. I get it. It's fair to have feelings about it. It's fair to have wants and desires, but stop for a second. And for my opinion, stop and think about how you're handling it. Okay. I get it. If Christmas Eve is your favorite holiday in the world and your ex is scheduled to have them on that date or whatever, have your emotions about it, have your feelings about it, but stop vomiting them all over the children. And the kids are smart. They get it. They know. So I guess I'm going to differ with you on that, in that just because you become a parent doesn't mean that all of a sudden nothing about you or your feelings or desires or wants don't matter anymore. Because I think a lot of
that sounds like another episode.
It is another episode, because how many parents just, all of a sudden it becomes all about the kids, and yes, that is absolutely important.
Absolutely. I do apologize because that's not what I meant.
I know, that's why
Right. It's the whole idea of at that moment, if the kids are present, and learn to work together. It's really not that difficult.
That is so much easier said than done. We get it.
Yeah.
We get it.
But for so many people, it's not easy. And I think we have to look at this from a trauma perspective too. When there was violence in that relationship, trauma in that relationship, that's just a whole nother dynamic as well. To say just get along for the sake of the kids is a little cruel.
If you're co-parenting during holidays, do your best to increase that communication and start planning as early as possible, knowing that you're going to need to be flexible, you'll need to compromise, and in the end, it's going to be okay. As parents, we stress ourselves out over all of the details, but truly, at some point, you are going to celebrate this holiday, whatever the holiday may be, and maybe it's not on the same day like Nikki said. And it's okay. So being willing to accept that. Co-parenting is difficult enough. I just encourage you to communicate as well as you can, because you can't control your ex, but communicate as well as you can to start planning for what those days or weeks are going to look like for your family.
Being an adult, though, does require pause. I seriously totally blanked. I knew exactly the word I wanted to use. Compromise. Oh my God.
That too. Pause and compromise.
Actually, it probably is, because I'm sure I'm not the only one that has problems where they forget words. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Pause. But we can make a song. Pause and compromise.
Oh yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Go, Nikki.
Yes.
Go, Nikki. All right, we scrolled a little bit, but in the end, yes, as an adult, you need to pause and compromise, especially when it comes to surviving the holidays. It will do wonders.
And I think we need to talk about really quickly the kind of conflicting message we just gave. Excuse me. Because the first message we said was set boundaries and do what is healthy for you. And then we just said compromise. So it's a balance, right? It's compromising in areas that don't
overstep your boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Don't overstep your boundaries. Don't compromise your integrity and your health.
Right. So you have to figure out what are your boundaries and what are you willing to compromise.
To summarize, step 4 is pause, compromise, but in a way that does not overstep your boundaries.
Okay, but you have to make a jingle out of it.
Pause.
Dang, I don't know how to do that. I'll dance. Go.
And compromise.
Very nice. Very nice. Tip number 5. Please be very aware that whatever holiday you're celebrating is not the same holiday that everybody else is celebrating, that there are lots of different cultures and traditions and holidays or non-celebration of certain holidays we're used to. So be aware of practicing some sensitivity to that.
What? Goodness. I know. Be open, people. Be kind. Be receptive. Don't be assholes.
Getting to know other holidays are sometimes kind of cool. So we have blended Christmas and Hanukkah. I don't know if somebody out there is going to get offended because we've done that. So we celebrate each one specifically. So we celebrate the faith-based Christmas, and then we celebrate Hanukkah, and we do it appropriately for each one, but we do both. And it's really cool because we've learned a whole lot of new things, and we've tried a whole lot of new foods and all, just everything. And so now we get all the jokes about, there was a comedian that did a joke about Hanukkah that I don't know that I would have got if I didn't celebrate Hanukkah, because it's about the game dreidels. So there's a game called Dreidel, Dreidel, Dreidel. I made it out of clay.
Very sing-songy today.
It is. Well, because
Jolene is feeling the fun today.
Oh, well, yeah, but usually you don't sing them like
No.
Jolene.
Because I tell people all the time, I don't sing for your birthday as a present to you.
I don't get it. I feel like Melissa right now. That one just went over my head.
I
am not a singer.
Oh.
So I'm not going to sing for you under typical circumstances.
Yeah, you don't want me to sing for you.
I do love the holidays. I'm like a holiday fiend. I don't care whether it's, I never really got into Halloween except the candy corn, but it has to be, it has to be.
You're the only person on the face of the planet that likes candy corn.
Raise your hand if you like candy corn, guys. Let us know in the comments.
A specific brand of candy corn that is absolutely amazing and is not the typical one that you get in the grocery store.
I don't think I believe you.
Yeah,
I respect you.
That one out.
I'm not gonna brand drop unless they're willing to sponsor us.
All right, guys.
Yes, I will.
We will continue our debate about candy corn and whether or not it is terrible or delicious off camera. For today, thank you so much for joining us on our 5 ways to survive your holidays. Thank you for allowing us into your lives and helping us make mental health relatable and a part of your everyday conversation. We will see you guys next Monday on Therapist Uncut.
Thank you for joining Therapist Uncut, a production of AMP Smart Business. To learn more about Therapist Uncut and stay up on upcoming episodes, please subscribe and follow us on social media. As a reminder, although the Therapist Uncut co-hosts are licensed therapists, they are not your therapists. This podcast is not intended to substitute professional mental health counseling. If you need professional therapy, please contact your local provider or primary care provider. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of Therapist Uncut.